In today's video, we have all the latest NHL news and rumors from around the NHL. Today's rumor mill focusing on teams like Edmonton and Montreal. Plus, we had a big waiver claim today from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Lots of injury updates and roster moves, including the Canucks recalling a top prospect. Crazy stat involving Brady Tkachuk, the Ottawa Senators, and the Boston Bruins. Plus, the latest when it comes to Igor Shesterkin and his potential contract extension with the New York Rangers. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Start first with the news that came this afternoon from the NHL waiver wire. There is a dedicated video on this on the channel from earlier in case you missed it, or if you want a little bit more in-depth analysis, feel free to check that out. But the Columbus Blue Jackets have claimed defenseman Dante Fabbro, who was on waivers from the Nashville Predators. So he now moves over to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Right shot defenseman, former first-round pick. Went through his college program at BU, has been in the NHL for like 5-6 years now. The Nashville Predators, of course, had hoped he would become a solid top four defenseman, two-way guy, and there was times when it looked like that might develop, but I think it's fair to say he certainly fell out of favor there with the coaching staff and Barry Trotz. Weren't quite happy with how things developed. In the last couple of years, he kind of worked his way kind of down the depth chart and kind of became almost like a spare part. He wasn't obviously trusted to be in the top six of the regular D-Corps and found his way to the waiver wire. So Columbus picks him up. I have to wonder, from Columbus' standpoint, what does this mean for David Jiricek? Clearly, that team is decimated by injuries. They've had a lot of adversity, of course, really ever since the summer and the tragedy involving Johnny Gaudreau. Then they start the season and start with, injury after injury. One of their right shot defensemen, Eric Gabranson, is out and expected to be out for a while, I believe. So it makes sense they might target a right shot D, but David Jiricek, who's a promising top prospect of theirs, who was a high pick just a couple years back, has been wanting more playing time. I think it's fair to say at times it's kind of shown maybe a little bit of frustration, at least it appears that way, and the lack of opportunity given so far in his young career. And then they go out and pick up another right shot D who very well could play ahead of him. Just wonder what this means for him. There's been some wondering if the Jackets would, they probably don't really want to trade Jiricek, but will it come to that? Will it get to a point where he may look for another opportunity based on the lack of opportunity he's not, getting in Columbus? I don't know. Hard to say, but either way, Fabbro goes to Columbus. He can certainly be used there. I just wonder how the impact and ripple effect on their team will be from the pickup, especially around David Jiricek. Some other roster moves around the NHL today. The Vancouver Canucks made a bunch of moves. They've sent Niels Alman and Archie Bains back to the minors and to the AHL, as well as goalie Artur Shilovs. And they've recalled Jonathan Lekkerimaki, one of their top prospects. Lekkerimaki's only been in North America just for the current season, has played well in his brief amount of time in the American Hockey League so far, and I think they're keen to get him a look, especially with Brock Boeser being out. And obviously, we don't know the extended timeline we're dealing with for Boeser yet. Clearly, looks like a concussion. We don't know. The Canucks haven't explicitly said that. They're calling it upper body, but clearly after a illegal hit to the head, which resulted in suspension for Tanner Jeannot, I think we can kind of put two and two together here and kind of say it's likely a concussion, which can be difficult to pinpoint a timeline. So we don't know, right? So it sounds like he's going to get an opportunity. Now, for Shilovs, that's interesting as well because Demko is certainly nowhere near ready to play. Lankinen's been getting the bulk of the playing time in Vancouver, so I kind of wonder if maybe this is more than anything just an opportunity for him to go down, because I believe they have a game this weekend that he can go play and probably be recalled before they have another NHL game. At least I believe with the schedule it should work out to be that. So I think that's kind of the purpose there, because they have recalled another one of their young goalies up from Abbotsford. So I don't think that really makes sense for them to be able to play unless they, they have to hope in that case that Lankinen doesn't get hurt. I just don't see them going down that road. That seems risky. I think this is just a chance for Shilovs to get some playing time and then come right back up. But we'll see. Obviously, be curious to see how Lekkerimaki makes out, assuming he gets into NHL action here in the next few days. The Ottawa Senators today announced that Zach Ostapchuk's been returned to the American Hockey League as well. That could mean one of two things. One, it might just be a paper transaction. It might just be a case of Ostapchuk, being sent down on the off days to help accrue more cap space, or it could also mean that Shane Pinto could draw in on their next game, which is on Tuesday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had a big road game, which we're going to talk about briefly here in a few minutes. So against the Boston Bruins last night, which they picked up a big win. Of course, they're off today and tomorrow, so they're already back in Ottawa. Obviously, it makes sense for them to return home, and then they'll head to Toronto likely tomorrow. So it's possible that he comes back up tomorrow as a recall and then goes for the road game with the Leafs, or maybe Pinto's back. We know that from what Travis Green's been saying in the media scrums after practices and games lately, it sounds like Pinto is close. And it could mean that, but we don't know. We'll have to probably get more of an update on that tomorrow. The Carolina Hurricanes site also announced they've recalled a couple of players, and defenseman Ty Smith and forward Tyson Jost. The Anaheim Ducks, who are in action here tonight, before close to the game time, announced that Mason McTavish is out tonight. He is dealing with some sort of injury and is considered day-to-day. And John Gibson makes his return to the crease tonight, getting the start for the Anaheim Ducks. Of course, John Gibson's going to be a name to watch. He's been in the rumor mill forever. Obviously, there was a lot of talk when we getting moved in the summer, never materialized. There's already been some speculation about, teams are going to be watching him when he comes back. Clearly, Lucas Dostal has been amazing for the Anaheim Ducks this year, so certainly there's, he's got the starting job. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But if they want to have any hope to trade Gibson, they need to play him, and he needs to ideally be better than what he's shown in the last couple of years. He needs to be at his best to have a chance to get moved. I mean, the contract's kind of dwindling down a little bit now compared to years past when these speculation or rumors first started popping up. But at this point, as much as Dostal's become the clear starter and the strongest goalie in their system right now, I don't think there's any doubt there. The Ducks overall are still not winning a whole lot, though, right? So, considering how well Dostal has played and the numbers he's put up, it's crazy to think that even with that there's no real progress and not many more wins coming their way. So obviously, I don't know as much as that's important. I think they need to kind of showcase Gibson and give him a chance. And if he can get on a decent run, it'll increase the odds of getting a trade. So we'll see what happens. He's definitely going to be one of the more interesting players to watch now that he's returning. As I mentioned, a really crazy stat from last night's game between Ottawa and Boston. Of course, there was a big road win for the Ottawa Senators. The Bruins continue their up and down season. It looked like they had turned a corner and were, kind of stringing together a couple of victories. But like I mentioned when we talked with them last week, as much as they got a couple of victories, they weren't the prettiest victories. And there were certainly still concerning things in their game that I wondered if it was really going to be sustainable, or, I'm not saying they're going to go on an extended losing streak or anything, but they have things to work on. There's no doubt. Their third periods especially have been really rough, and I don't know if we can really put an explanation on why that is. But the crazy stat is last night's Brady Tkachuk, the Ottawa's captain, who scored the overtime winning goal, ended up with 12 shots on goal, which is phenomenal. You don't really see that a lot, but he actually tied his own record, which is the team record, before Brady came to town as the Ottawa Senators first round pick back in 2018. It was held by Jason York, actually a former defenseman, who had 12 shots on goal. And since then, Brady has done it 4 separate occasions, once this year, once last year, and a couple of years before that. So that's not the crazy part, though. The fact that he had 12 shots is quite a thing. He's one of the few players who can get the high shots on goals and high hits, but he almost outshot the Boston Bruins team on his own. That's the part that's crazy. The Ottawa Senators actually held the Boston Bruins to 0 shots in the third period. They only had 16 shots in total. He himself had 12. So the Bruins team only had 4 more shots than Brady himself. That's absolutely crazy. Not something you really see. I mean, the fact of a team getting 15 or 16 shots, okay, the other team played really good team defense, clogged up the neutral zone, all that kind of stuff, not that unusual. It does happen. But the fact that one player had that many compared to that team, it's just kind of nuts in that sense. At one point, Linus Ullmark of the Senators went on the actual, not game clock, but regular clockwise, went over an hour without facing a shot. And of course, he made a huge save. The overtime started off like gangbusters with the quick rush. It was like a track meet. Ullmark makes a huge save at one end off, I think it was Elias Lindholm, if I'm not mistaken. Rebound comes out. Brady and Norris go back down 2-on-1. Brady takes a shot, scores, beats Swayman, game over. So it's just kind of crazy how the game works, and we see that all the time in hockey. Huge save at one end, goal immediately after at the other. So big win for Ottawa, but just a crazy, ridiculous shot on goal stat that you don't often see. Kevin Weeks, of course, a few days back had put out a cryptic tweet, which he likes to do, kind of suggesting, making you kind of pinpoint all the, he posted a picture which appeared to be New York City with $11.5 million, and kind of made everybody think that an Igor Shesterkin contract extension was imminent or close, or something along those lines. Obviously, at this point, nothing has come to be, and I believe the Rangers played that night, and I think that's the night that they played the Sabres and got spanked, and Igor actually, I believe, got pulled. So I think he brought some bad karma or bad juju around Weeks or around Igor. It's just kind of weird how that happened. That post goes up, you think of contract extensions coming, and then he has like one of his worst games in forever. But anyways, the update on that, obviously nothing has materialized, nothing's been announced. Larry Brooks, who covers the Rangers closely and writes for the New York Post, had his latest article suggesting that he doesn't think that's the case. He thinks it's going to take at least $500,000 more to get Shesterkin locked up, meaning like around a $12 million contract, which was rumored for some time. I mean, a lot of people out there had the opinion maybe he'd settle for less and come in around 11.5. Larry does not think so. Thinks $12 million is what it's going to take to get him signed. So we'll have to wait and see how things go. And from there, it doesn't seem like the week's post is going to happen, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, lots of insiders have their own intel, and at this point, one's right, or one may be right and one may not be. So we'll have to follow the situation closely. But for the Rangers, you have to think they don't want this to drag on too long. I think the last thing they want is to see him drag it through the whole year and end up, with a situation where they could lose them in free agency. They have lots of time, but no time to panic yet. But it's getting to that point where it's always possible later in the year. You just don't want the other side to be like to shut down negotiations and not want to talk about it any further, right? So we'll see where it goes. The Rangers are doing well. They don't want it to be a distraction there either. At Edmonton, of course, we know that they've had an up and down season, and certainly been for a while now. The rumor's been a right shot defenseman, ideally a defensive minded, more of a stay at home shutdown D is what they've been looking for, to play with Darnell Nurse in your top four. That's ideally what they've been rumored. Bob Stauffer, of course, very well connected reporter. He himself lately has said that he thinks that the team might have shifted what they're looking for. He's not so sure they're now looking for more of a shutdown guy, but more of a puck-moving defenseman. So it's still that they're looking for a right shot top 4D to play with Nurse, but he says they've tried, obviously, like Stetcher, Emberson, Kulak, I think, has had some playing time there, and it hasn't really worked out the greatest for a pair with Nurse, and clearly that's something that they need to address before they get too far. It's definitely going to be, at the very least, a trade deadline issue, but, at this rate, the way their season has gone, I don't think they can really wait that long. I mean, they need to get things in order between the McDavid injury and the other. Yeah, you could make an argument that the new people fitting in have taken longer, and you're starting to get a little bit more secondary goals. But they can't put this off too long and put their team risking finishing too low in the standings or anything. So we'll see what happens. But interesting to note that they might be looking for more of a puck mover. To me, that one of the Oilers' weaknesses in the last few years is the ability to play strong defense. I don't know. To me, they might want to reconsider that. If they can find somebody who's really strong defensively but can also move the puck well, would balance. That's going to be, maybe shouldn't be too difficult to find, but that would be more of the style of defenseman I think they should go for. A combination of both of those things, not just one or the other. Now, in Montreal, we talked a lot about different moves they're going to make. They've gotten a lot of airtime here on the channel lately, and largely because the rumor mill has been ablaze with Habs Rumours. When you listen to the NHL insiders and all the different reporters out there, they've been a very common, popular team to analyze, and like I said, there's been lots of speculation because they've been on a bit of a losing streak and they haven't made the progress they were hoping for this year. So clearly, they're getting a lot of attention. We've heard a lot about trading for a number 2 center. We've heard about trading for a right shot defenseman, and all these different things that they should be looking at depending on who you talk to and what insider and reporter thinks they should do. Well, one other situation we're looking at here today, I'm going to look at 2 things actually. One is the Montreal Gazette article from Pat Hickey. He doesn't think they should be trading for Trevor Zegras. He doesn't think they should be trading for a number 2, like a second pair defenseman or a number 2 center. He thinks they need to analyze goaltending first and foremost. Like we had talked about some comments comments from George Larac the other night, how, trading Jake Allen might have been a mistake, and that he says they never had the intention of coming into the year with Montembeault and Primo as their goalie tandem, but yet here we are, and it struggled. Montembeault had a hot start, but then cooled off real quick. You could say the team in front of him played a role in that, and that's probably fair, but, early on, he was kind of lights out, and then he kind of became a little bit more, unfortunately more average and then below average in some cases as well. So certainly trading for a goaltender appears to be, I would think makes a smart move, but it's going to be difficult. The general consensus between Larac and Hickey and all these guys, they kind of seem to think that keeping Montembeault makes the most sense, and bringing in a more experienced goaltender to work with him, and that they can kind of maybe, if they can have, which is what they had with Jake Allen, if they can have a veteran guy who can be more of a mentor to Montembeault, kind of help him get better, and then, of course, hopefully play well himself, and they can kind of hold down the fort while they're waiting for Jacob Fowler, because Fowler appears to be the real deal for I think he's got the best chance of anybody in the organization to be considered the goalie of the future, but that's a ways off. He's still in college hockey. Look at Devin Levi, prime example in Buffalo. It's been a couple of years now that he's been out of college, and he's not a starting goaltender yet. A lot of people thought he would jump in and automatically be amazing and star goaltender, be up for the Vezina, and, after the amazing college stats he had, and it never seems to happen, and he was, statistically, we should have known it wasn't going to happen, and the Sabres should have known, and now, he's more of a backup to UPL, and it's kind of settling in a little bit more in a different role. But when he was given opportunity to kind of run with it, being the starter, it didn't go so well, right? So they got to be patient. Obviously, a veteran goaltender might be on their wish list, and we'll have to see. Sometimes the trades you make don't work out, and you kind of have regret. So that's one thing. Now, Craig Button, on the other hand, was on the Tony Marinaro podcast, and he was suggesting when it comes to the number 2 center role and adding another forward into that, the top 6 there, He seemed very much in favor of moving a guy like Kirby Dach. He thinks that they need a true number 2 center, and that, with Dach, obviously at this point, has not really grasped that role. He's played on the wing. They seem to have a hard time deciding where he's going to fit. And obviously, in the last couple of years, he's had issues staying healthy. And then, of course, when he has been healthy lately, he hasn't been the most productive. So, I don't know that his value would be super high. This is the hard part now. But he suggested that the Montreal Canadiens maybe target a player like Cole Perfetti. Now, we know in Winnipeg that he's not really playing much at center, but he was a center when he was drafted and has had a chance to play center. And will he become a center at the NHL? I don't know. He's a little bit smaller, not overly big. So, it's hard to really say what he's going to be at the NHL, but he is a very strong offensive player. That much we can, I think, say with certainty. He didn't get a long-term contract in Winnipeg. They had a hard time coming to terms. He was open to a long-term deal. He was hoping for that. Didn't work out. And obviously because of that, there's some thoughts that maybe the Jets aren't completely sold on him long-term yet, right? So, if he could be available, that's what Button suggests they should do. You think, the way he talked about Perfetti as an option. Now, the only problem is, though, like I said, I personally think they should consider moving Dach, too. I mean, at this point, he's got the size, but it hasn't worked. And I think at this point, they need to consider it, and maybe they have, but obviously at the end of the day, if you're going to move them, you really need to figure out a way to bring back a player like Perfetti or another younger, strong offensive player. They've been linked to Zegras forever. Perfetti might be a better fit. Zegras' value has really dropped. He's only got, I think, 1 goal in the season in Anaheim this year, and it's not going well. I don't know that he has a long future in Anaheim, and at this point, I think his value is unfortunately going to be super low, and they're not going to want to move him when there's no value. So I don't know what the Ducks are going to do with Zegras, but at this point, considering how last year and this year has gone for him, I would probably be cautious of making that move. So we'll see. Perfetti's a player who seems to be on the rise, where Zegras is right now a player that's on the downfall. So I don't know. But I mean, what do you think of Craig Button's analysis? Do you think Dach might be a player that they have to move? And should they be targeting a player like Perfetti? We can't even say with certainty that Perfetti is available. I think he's definitely not available right now, considering the Jets are red hot. Only 1 loss in the season. They're the NHL's top regular season team at the present time. There's no way that's going to happen now. This is more of a conversation for down the road, maybe into the offseason. Like I said, because the Jets and Perfetti didn't get a long-term deal done, Would that be something they would consider? If they would, and I'm Montreal, I'm definitely having the conversations, but it's going to boil down to asking price, and I don't think a guy like Kirby Dach is going to get it done. They're not going to take your leftover scraps or players that you're not really interested in keeping anymore to make a deal. So I don't know what they would want. It would probably be a pretty steep price, and it might be something that might prove to be too difficult. I think it's a good thought by Craig Button. It's just logistically tough to do. So let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. New to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.